Okay, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Thanks so much for those that are tuning in live and those that are watching it later. It's an honor to be with you guys today. I got a question this morning about the podcast. If you want to listen to this on audio on iTunes, you can search under Unlocking Greatness. It's not called Daily Boost on iTunes. It's called Unlocking Greatness. Okay. So yesterday we started to really get into the idea of vision is designed to make us uncover our be. And I mentioned yesterday this concept by a man named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Now, this is an idea called flow. Flow is a word that has made it into this sort of the general lexicon. And I want to talk to you about that today. So let's delve into it a little bit. So if you remember yesterday, we really started talking about that the real goal of a vision is not to necessarily get that thing, right? The real goal of a vision is to uncover who I am. And with all my complexities, with all my nuances, we are not one thing. Some people are, but they're really not. I mean, it's almost impossible to be one thing. It's almost impossible for someone to say, all I am is an author or a basketball player or a doctor. It's not an accurate description. Like even Michael Jordan wasn't just a basketball player. There were nuances to his game that he discovered throughout his career. And only when he discovered it, he gave room to other people. He spent his time sort of like shaving away who he really was. And even if you look into his career, you find a moment where his, if we can almost like put it into what we're talking about, which is his vision went from being the best to becoming, to winning a championship. Right? Being the best is different than winning a championship. And once his vision shifted to winning a championship, it gave expression to different parts of him, which now allowed other people to be part of his life, namely his team. So that's what happens in people. When you're young, it's like sometimes you have this like independent, I'm taking on the world. As you get older, you start saying, whoa, I want to win a championship. I want to have greater relationships. I want to be able to connect to more people. I want to be able to give more value. So your vision is always changing as you're always changing. But the vision is always giving you indications of who you are. Now, the contrast to that is what you do every day. That's the game. That's what we're doing. It's taking us a while, but that's what happens. What you see and how you navigate. And one of the great mistakes we make is that when we're in the middle of doing the ritual, doing the tasks of the day, we take our minds, if you will, and we keep it at the vision. If you remember, a week and a half ago maybe, we spoke about this idea of acting and thinking. Time to act, time to think. And how if you don't think properly, you end up thinking and acting at the same time. If you spend time thinking, if you spend time planning, if you spend time reviewing, you walk around with a greater clarity of what to do. And so when you now engage in the activity, you engage in it with a much greater determination. You don't got to think about it. Like, you know you've got to do this. And if you remember, we told the story of a friend of mine who went to see his family member, and he kept on like hesitating. And finally he just realized that he thought about it and he should go. And he just did it. Like the hesitation is what stops him. Right? Last night I was together with a great guy named Gedalia Fenster on his show. And we spoke about this idea that before you engage in something difficult, there's like a thin layer of, I'm too tired. No, I can't. This doesn't make sense. It's like a thin layer that like surrounds the full tank of gas underneath you that is there to help you through it. And unless you have the pre-thought that you're going to plow through it, you get stopped at it, right? The phone call you have to make, there's like a thin layer of, I don't want to. Unless you're pre-thought, I'm going to make this call no matter what. If you don't have your time to think and plan, your vision time, then when you get into action time, you're overthinking it. In sports, or in this the book we spoke about I don't remember which day, called from John Elliott, a sports psychologist, speaks about this concept called the squirrel brain, where when you're in the game, you have to be, so to speak, in a squirrel brain. Just watching my time. Squirrel brain means just do it. That's the balance. So why is that so important for? Why can't you think, act? Why when you're acting, do you have to be all into the actions? The all in, if you remember the conversation I had with my coach. So there's a great research by a man named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And he is really he created this concept called flow. It's an incredible story of a kid who escaped, I think it was Hungary, when he was very little, came to America, couldn't speak English, learned how to read English through comic books, ended up, I think, in the University of Illinois, worked his tail off, and then became a professor, believe it or not, in the University of Chicago. I think he was the youngest ever tenured professor there. Brilliant. Yeah, Hungary. Andy's saying yes, Hungary. Thank you, Andy. As I'm talking, Andy's already researching. It's like I have a fact checker with me. I feel like I'm in the debates. Thank you, Andy. And he became obsessed with this idea of optimal performance. And he had this theory that optimal performance, the great performers, the people that are, incredible at their jobs, it's not necessarily based on the genes that you have. It's not your history. It's really your perspective and mentality. What he did was he gave people beepers. For those who remember the days of beepers, for those who don't, there was once a time where you did not have a phone attached to your hip, and instead you had a little tiny box that beeped when someone tried to reach you with a number on it that you called back. Doesn't that feel like that happened like 700 years ago? You know what I'm saying? Remember beepers? So he gave people beepers, and he would beep them throughout the day. And every time he beeped them, he asked them like a series of questions, trying to extract what they're doing, how they feel. Are they being successful? Are they feeling successful? And at the end of this period of time, he almost had like a flip chart, like a flip book of each person's life that he was following, showing like, these are the times that you feel like this. These are the times that you feel like you're most successful. And like, he tried to connect the dots. What is it that makes people feel successful? What is it that makes people more successful? Like, what's happening to them? Where are they? What's their mentality? What's their mental state? And he came up with an incredible concept. Really, it's unbelievable. He splits up people's actions into two types of categories. One group called autotelic behaviors and one group called exotelic behaviors. Autotelic, or say exotelic, is behaviors that are done for another reason. External. Autotelic, like autobiography, self, are behaviors being done just for the sake of the behavior. So, for example, if you come home one afternoon and you see your kids playing ball in the backyard, right? Let's assume that little kids and they're playing a intense game of touch football in your backyard. They're not doing it because they think they're going to make it to the NFL. They're not doing it because they're hoping for a scholarship. They're not doing it because they're in front of a crowd of people, and if they score a touchdown, they're going to get social acceptance. They're playing in the backyard because they love the game. So in that moment, the game is playing is an autotelic behavior. They're just engaged in the activity for the activity's sake. When you go, kids, homework, and they go, what? Yeah, homework. Well, I don't want to do homework. Well, if you don't do math in 5th grade, well, then you're not going to get to 8th grade, then you're not going to get to high school, and you're not going to get to college. Basically, your whole life is over if you don't go do homework. And the kids come dragging in like, oh, they sit down and do the homework. The homework is an exotelic behavior. They don't want to do the homework. They don't want to engage in this. They're doing it for a future benefit. some believed perception that if I do this well, it'll help me in the future. What Csikszentmihalyi discovered was that when you're engaged in a behavior for the behavior itself, an activity for the activity itself, when you allow yourself to get lost in an activity, what's happening is, for those of you who remember, we've been doing this together. And for those who are just joining right now, don't get discouraged. Just go back and watch a few, or we'll keep on reviewing. But for those who have been together with me for the past few weeks, I hope these concepts are reviewing itself. Remember, we spoke about you only have a window of what your brain can take in. 120, 125, 110 to 125 bits of information per second, which means when you're engaged in a behavior for a behavior itself, you're lost in it. So your brain is fully engaged in it, which means you're seeing the contours of it, the nuances of it. That's why you can play ball, if you love playing ball, for 2 hours and forget to eat. That's why when you're doing something that you love doing, you could just be like, wait a second. Oh, it's 12 o'clock at night. I know. That's why there are times where you're doing something and you're tired and you start doing it and you feel like you're energized. It's because a lot of the signals that our brain sends to our body are really just reacting to the world. And we have more power than we think. We have more strength than we think. We don't need to eat when we think we do. And so when you take all of your attention and you immerse it into an activity, you're lost. You ever do that? You ever get lost in something and you look at your clock, it's 2 hours? It doesn't have to be an activity. You can be watching something or doing something or talking to somebody. You ever get lost in an activity and time seems to fly? It's been 2 hours? Oh my gosh. That happens because your conscious brain that's sort of tracking time and tracking food and tracking exhaustion and doing all these things and reacting, pushes it all out because it's immersed in an activity because you were looking at the activity for the activity itself. When you're in that state, Csikszentmihalyi says, you're in a state called flow. Flow means you're like lost in it. And that's when you're at your best. You don't have to be a world-class professional to be engaged in something at a world-class level. Yeah, of course, you have to work on your expertise, muscle memory, no question. But many times, the reason why we're not more successful in the day-to-day things in life is because when we're engaged in them, we're not lost in them. The behavior is exotelic. So if you're sitting at work and you want to be someplace else, even though you're doing your work, you're in the world of exotelic activities. So your body, your mind, your subconscious is always like getting distracted. When is it done? When is it over? When do I get what I want? I don't really like the work I'm doing. I'm doing it for the paycheck. This happens in faith a lot, where people don't really spend the time to understand their faith. So they don't really want to be engaged in the rituals of their faith. But they do it because they're scared that if they don't, God will be mad at them. So even when they're engaged in it, they're not lost in it. It's not an autotelic behavior. This happens sometimes in relationships. The spouse doesn't really care really what the other spouse wants. They just want what they can do for them. So when they're hearing them speak, it's like, are you done? Are we good? When we're engaged in life, we tend to engage ourselves from an exotelic perspective, doing things for an outside reason and not for the activity itself. And as a result, we're not amazing at things because we feel like we're empty. We feel like everything that I do isn't deep. Yeah, feeling we're like, do you ever have in your house like a lot of junk food for some party or for Shabbat or something, and then you look at it and it's amazing and you eat everything and you feel gross? It's because the food is very surface. It's not deep. It's not satisfying. It's not fulfilling on a deep level. It's lacking nutritional content. So it feels good going down, but it doesn't feel good staying in. That's like life sometimes. When you're always chasing the next thing, when you're always chasing our tails, when we're always waiting for the next thing to happen, the activities that we engage in those activities don't feel deep because they're not. It's exotelic all the time. And then we never feel filled. We never feel satisfied. And that's how we feel empty sometimes. The relationships aren't satisfying us. My faith isn't satisfying me. My career isn't satisfying me. And we're constantly unsatisfied, thinking that the answer is TGIF, thank God it's Friday, or the vacation in 6 months, or the distraction that I'm looking for on the screen that's in my hands. Only because I'm not satisfied with my life. It's only because we're living in the world of exotelic behaviors. So here's the greatness of that research as far as I see it. It doesn't mean that we have to like find our purpose and run away to a cave and like paint. When you're looking at the vision, right? If you're constantly looking at this vision and you're trying to nuance into your B's, let's say, you're doing the work of thinking. Remember that life has got two pieces to it. Time to think, time to act. Time to think, time to act. If in your time of thinking, you're visualizing, your head is a little bit further down the road, and you're doing it to find your B. And we'll talk about this more in detail, because in the workbooks that I sent you guys, for those that want, there's a section like that where we talk about the ideal day, and then we move to the B. So hopefully in the next, this week is a short week because of the holiday, but maybe next week we'll, for those who have the workbook, we'll go into that specific exercise. But the more you're working in the area of finding the B, don't be impatient to get there. Don't be impatient to always be looking to the next. When you get into the world of action, in order to do it correctly, you have to be lost in it. It has to be autotelic. And what that means is that you have to look at every activity you do and try to be the best at that activity for the activity's sake. Now, if you're not thinking and all you're doing is reacting, now you're lost, right? If you're not thinking, email me for those who want the workbook, charlie@charlieharg.com. This way I'll make sure to remember, because after this is over, this thing, the chat goes away. So Andy, if you don't mind just putting up my email again for those that want to email me now, that's how I'll know to send you the workbook. Oh, you already did. Thanks. Oh, there it is. Oh my gosh, Andy, 2 steps in front of me. When you're living in a world where you're always reacting, that's why we can't get lost in activities. You see how if you live in a world where you're trying to plan your days, then when you're in the middle of many of your activities, not all of them, but many of your activities, you have to train yourself how to engage in it in a way where you want to just do the activity regardless of the outcome. I want to just have the conversation. I want to just complete this project in the right way. Forget if they like it, they don't like it. I want to just finish this talk. Forget if people say they like it, they don't say they like it. I want to just play with my child. I want to just get on a trail. I want to just pray. I want to just study for 10 minutes. If we start to change our perspective from, I want to do this so that and we start to sort of like cut out the impact, cut out the results a little bit. Remember, you can vision what you want, but when you come into the world of action, you got to cut out results. You got to cut out what it's going to impact. And in those few minutes that you're doing your ritual, or in those few minutes that you're doing your activity or your behavior, whatever it is. Now, I know if we have to react to things you don't want to, fine. Do it for 2, 3, do it for 3 activities a day. You don't got to do it every second. But for a few times a day when you're in an activity, just try to do the activity for the activity's sake, regardless of the action. Just to be better at the thing you're doing. Just to push your boundaries within the walls of the activity. Just to derive enjoyment in doing something with as much excellence as you can muster. And if we start to, from a micro perspective, create more autotelic experiences. When you're at dinner with your family, you're just trying to make dinner as great as it can be. You're as engaged as possible. You're eating as well as possible. You're not overeating, you're not undereating, you're not over talking, you're not under talking. You're happy. Just take the experience of dinner and live in dinner for the few minutes that dinner's around. And when we do these things, we start to create a perspective of an autotelic life, and we find flow. And where we find flow, we find success. It's a perspective shift. It's not a talent shift. And if we do it, we get better and better at actions. All right, we're going to hopefully conclude a little bit tomorrow, and then maybe next week we'll go into the next part of the workbook. If you don't have it, remember, charlie@charlieharary.com. Just for those that are asking, this is live on Zoom and on the Facebook pages of both my page, Charlie Harary, and Momentum every morning at 9. And for those that want the on-demand version, we have a WhatsApp group you can email us to get the information for. And it's also on my Instagram page and on my YouTube page, for those that want to tune in. But until then, make it a great day. Let's try today at least one autotelic behavior. We'll catch up tomorrow. It's been an honor being with you, and I hope and pray with God's help to be able to see you again tomorrow. Have a great day.